being able to be who you want to be, do what you want to do, whenever you want.
He would get upset when his private jet was late.
It's kind of like wanting world peace, but learning how to make a nuclear bomb.
I've got something he'll never have enough. Hi, I'm Richard Farleigh. Welcome to the Boardroom. Today, I'm speaking to Jason Greystone, who has some great insights into business and freedom. And while we chat, we're going to have a friendly game of chess. So you've identified freedom particularly as a big thing in people's lives, and you want to teach them about that. I mean, What does that involve?
I think initially people chase financial freedom. I think it's about being mentally free and financially free. So being able to be who you want to be, do what you want to do, whenever you want, with whoever you want, wherever you want, and then have enough financial underpinning to basically do that forever, or take some time off if you want to.
So do you find most people are chasing the wrong things?
I think people are just chasing financial freedom when they don't know who they are. So, no matter, if you're not mentally free, you'll never achieve financial freedom. It's as simple as that.
And are they compatible? So, I mean, if you're a slave to the desk, for example, a slave to your job, you can't necessarily have both, can you? Normally it's one or the other.
Yeah, well, I think if you're doing something that's uninspiring to you as a job, then you are going to chase escapism. So therefore, when you get paid, you're not going to spend it on buying time into the future. You're actually going to spend it on a reward. So you'll buy a lavish holiday or a nice car to make you feel good, or you'll go out and spend your money at the bars and clubs.
So you might overspend.
You might overspend. But if you're doing something you're inspired by and you wake up every day feeling like this isn't work, then you are free at that point. So the money just is like how much time you could buy into the future should you need to stop, if you become injured or you need to look after a loved one. So that to me is financial freedom. It's almost like the least important part.
Well, one way I've been saying to start a business, if you want to start a business, is identify a problem that you've seen or you've experienced or has frustrated you. Is often a good first-hand experience is often a good way to get a business idea.
Absolutely. I think that a lot of people start a business with an idea, where as an idea it's pretty useless because you need some demand. I always think that you should build businesses to demand that's there. And the great thing about doing it from a frustration is because that's already a demand, because there's going to be other people like you. If you're frustrated, there's going to be other people that are frustrated with that problem. So even if you haven't gone out and done tons of market research, chances are you're onto a winner there, because there's going to be other people like you. There just will be. So it's a great place to start.
So your book became phenomenally popular, did phenomenally well.
Yeah.
Can you give us the 5 takeaways? And maybe
sure.
Give us 5 out of 6, and then we'll go and read it to find out the 6th.
For sure. The book's called Always Free. Yeah, we launched it in July 25. It went to number 1 in 7 countries in 4 categories, which I was blown away by. And it's called Always Free because it's about this concept of being always free. And it started with a kind of, whenever my friends would come over back in the day, they'd be like, oh, we should go to the cinema one day, or we should, go camping or go for a meal. And my reply would always be, yeah, just let us know, I'm always free. And then after a while, they'd be like, how are you always free? Like, basically, we always had to work around their calendar because I was at home all the time. And they were like, what, are you a drug dealer or something? Why is he always home? But then it later then became kind of this affirmation of like being free from everything, being always free. I've always been free since I was a kid. And funnily enough, when you were 7 years old, I remember playing out with the football and we play hopscotch or whatever, and ride a bike, climb trees and all that kind of stuff. And when your parents used to call you in at night, when the street lights come on, well, I mean, that was a great time to be alive. But when they used to call you in for bed or whatever, you'd be like, when I'm an adult, I'm going to be free. No one's telling me what to do. And then when you see adults become adults, they become further and further away from freedom, less and less of who they were at 7 years old, right? And the thing that really hit me was last year I was fortunate enough to be invited onto Necker Island.
So for those who don't know, Necker Island is what?
Oh, Necker Island is Richard Branson's private island. So he bought it back in the 70s for a punt for about I think he bought it for like $180,000.
And he loves to get a whole lot of entrepreneurs and interesting people together.
Yeah, he basically created an island where he could live his dream life, build a massive team around that, and he funds it all by charging people to go there. And I rock up to Necker Island with 40 of these amazing entrepreneurs who are perceived to be top of the game, like the end game. This is the end game, right? Private islands and jets and all this kind of stuff. And we turn up and you realise that all of these people have spent money and time to be on this island to swim, climb rocks, ride bikes, play tennis.
They've spent a lot of money. They've spent a lot of money to do things which cost nothing.
And go to bed early. and it was a real moment of like, we've always had that. So if that's the end game, what's everyone chasing? So you've always had this freedom. And then I started dissecting of what that is, because people chase financial freedom. But I know loads of people that have been born into money, but they go around lost. They've got severe depression because they've got no sense of purpose.
Well, I saw that, from a billionaire friend, years ago, and a phenomenal amount of money, and he would get upset when his private jet was late, and I'm like, like his upset-ometer was so fine,
He's upset.
Whereas, I'm like, just move the dial, and your expectations are so much easier. It's slightly Buddhist, but it's not not a hard ask. Don't worry if something holds you up for 10 minutes.
Right.
But he would set the bar, spend money to set the bar of his expectations so high that he was always disappointed.
Yeah, right.
But I learned a lot from him, and I learned a lot that he had all this money and he wasn't very happy.
No.
I'm like, well, I really learned, I was running a hedge fund in my late 20s, early 30s, and I retired a bit like you at 34, because it sort of put me off money. I made what I thought was a lot of money, and then I moved to Monaco and realised that's not actually that much money, dude. But I learned from him. It sort of put me off making money because I'm like, I've got enough now. I can go and I can play tennis. I can go to the beach. I can, this is unbelievable for someone who came out of the care system, right? And so I sort of dropped out for a while because I thought you don't need, it just makes you unhappy. I'm like, it's much easier to turn your dial of your expectations than just to spend more and more and more and just get fussier and fussier and fussier and still be unhappier.
Exactly that. And that is like, even on Necker, people had exited businesses for hundreds of millions, and they were asking me how I was so chilled and how I was so content and how I wasn't hustling and chasing, because they'd ask me what my goals were and I'd be like, I haven't got any goals. I've got none. I'm not striving for anything.
So that's for someone who's sort of teaching self-help, that's a big one. You're not teaching goals.
I don't have any goals. Yeah, I don't have any goals because...
But do you recommend to people not to have goals?
No, not at all. Not at all. But knowing when enough is enough.
Well, there's a famous, I don't know if you've heard of Joseph Heller, who wrote Catch-22. You've probably heard the story, but whether it's true or not, but he was told about some billionaire, and he said, well, I've got something he'll never have. And they said, what's that? He said, enough.
Enough.
Knowing when you do have enough,
contentment.
Which is not everyone does have enough.
No,
but if you do have enough, you're lucky.
I think so. In Necker, there was a few people that came to me and they were like, I'm anxious over this money. I feel like I want to invest it, but I don't want to let it out of my grip. I don't want it sitting in the bank, so I don't know what to. It's going to dissolve, and they had all this anxiety. So, and then I met entrepreneurs that are really great at earning loads of money every month, but they had to earn loads of money every month because they had no money. So they were on this kind of hamster wheel where they would spend everything they earn basically and have to earn it all again the following month.
So they're earning plenty of money, but their spending went up as their income went up.
Exactly.
I mean, I was the opposite. As I said, coming through the care system, I was like a squirrel. The minute I made any money,
security.
But when I was like 14, 15, I knew I was going to have to come out of the care system, so I wouldn't be able to go to university or anything. I always became like, I've got to save. I was so nervous about my future all the time, and so when I did start to make money as an investment banker, early economist, I just saved everything.
Exactly the same.
I was a squirrel. I assumed that I was going to go lose my job the next day. And actually the guys who worked for me, and they were typically guys in those days, they got their bonus and I was their boss, and I said, listen, you are free to do what you want. And, serious sums of money, I said, you're free to do what you want with this bonus. You can go and buy a fancy car. You can do, but I would be given what the industry we're in, I'd be very impressed if you went and bought property, went and put a deposit down on property or put it into shares. I'd be very impressed if you saved it, or rather than just went and flashed it away, because who knows what's going to happen next year. And they all did that.
Oh, great.
And
amazing.
They thank me to this day. They
sure.
say, oh, thank you for getting to put deposit on that property.
I'm sure, because there's
rather than the fancy car. So your idea about freedom is that sort of changing the dial, just learning what you actually enjoy rather than what costs a lot of money?
Yeah, so always free is mental freedom, mobility freedom, and financial freedom. And when you have all of those three things, you are what I consider always free. And it's basically knowing who you are. Because a lot of people tell me they want freedom, and I say, what does freedom mean? And they say, well, I just want to do what I want, wherever I want, with whoever I want, whenever I want. And I say, okay, what do you want? And they go, I don't know. Because they've never given it a chance, they've never even given themselves permission to actually realise who they are and what they actually want. They're chasing things that are important to other people all the time. So if you're not mentally free, if you don't know who you are and what you truly want, you'll never get there. So I had this really fortunate experience in my old boss's car on the way to work one day. I was about 19. His name was George. And he said, what car do you want? And I said, I want this Lexus IS200 at the time, right? And he said, how much does it cost? And I said, £250 a month, or whatever the finance was. It was about $250 a month. And he was like, how much does it really cost? And I said, I don't know what you mean. And he said, well, what about the wear and tear, the tyres, the insurance, the fuel, the tax, the MOTs, and all this kind of stuff? And I was like, I don't know. And he said, go away and work out what that is, monthly average over the 12 months. And I said, all right. Went back, did this spreadsheet, went in the next day, and I said, it's about £600 a month. And he was like, so do you still want the car? And I said, not really. I don't really value the car that much. But he said, but at least now you know exactly what you need to afford that car. Otherwise, it was just, you never really considered having it. And I said, that's true. But I went back and I just priced up my whole life. Like I was like, okay, well, what would be my dream flat, or what would be my shopping, and how much do I want to go travelling?
How much is this pet costing me?
The pet was a big one, right? The dog. And I priced it all up, and I went into him and I took it. I said, what do you think of this? And he said, you don't really want that. You just want that because so-and-so's got it. And I was like, okay, fair enough. I deleted off some bits and pieces. And I had this solid list of what I truly would make me happy, you know? And it was like a destination. I knew where I wanted to go. And when I've surpassed that, I've just thought everything after that's a bonus. I was truly happy and content knowing that I'd hit that milestone. Whereas what I see with a lot of entrepreneurs, from the people in NECA to most entrepreneurs or anyone chasing freedom, is they're on this like train, and they think that one day it's just going to get to this destination, everything's going to be okay. And they don't really know what that looks like, but they're just on it. And then like they get to a station every now and then, and the doors open, and it looks beautiful, and they're like, oh, that looks good. But then they're like, I'll get off at the next one. I'll get the next million, next pay rise, you know, and they keep going and keep going. And what happens is the train derails, and then their money's all over the floor, and their relationships all over the floor, and nothing's kind of working out, and they think, I should have just got off back there. I would have been happy with that. And I think the difference between having contentment and not is knowing where that stop is in the first place and not looking back in hindsight. And I'm so thankful for that exercise that we did, because I kind of knew what my station was in the first place.
Well, you know, it's interesting. You use a word which I think is clever, which is content, not happy, or happiness. You know, being happy maybe is like a temporary feeling of, you know, I'm happy because something good just happened, you know. But content is like a long-term, you know, level of peace.
Yes.
You know, and you know, happiness is just little peaks, which, you know, so maybe it's more important to chase contentment than just temporary happiness. So do you think being an entrepreneur is about getting freedom? Is it from having a boss, or freedom financially?
I think freedom is what entrepreneurs chase. It's just that they don't do their actions don't demonstrate freedom. Like it's like if you want financial freedom and it's kind of like wanting world peace, but learning how to make a nuclear bomb. You're doing things that are not conducive to the goal. So delegation is I know that sounds nothing to do with financial freedom, but it is. I mean, if you can't delegate, you're never going to get to a place of financial freedom, because you're always, it's always you exchanging your time for the money that you're earning. So delegation, I mean, Richard Branson, he'll tell you all about that, but he's like a master delegator. That's the first thing you need to work on, because you can't scale your business without delegating. There was a time I was 13. This is where I grew up on this estate in South London called Hatfield Mead. That year, I wanted this BMX bike for my 14th birthday, and I was trying to persuade my mum and my stepdad to get it for me for my birthday, and they were like, "We can't afford the bike, but we'll give you half if you can raise half." So I went and started this car wash, and I washed this car on the first day, and it took me all day to wash this bloody car. It got £5 plus £2 tip from this lady called Lynn. And that night I was telling my friend, I was like, I'm going to get this bike, in no time, if I can do a car a day or whatever. And he was like, do you want me to help? And I was like, I don't really want to pay you, but okay. And my stepdad came in and he said, I'm going to the shop. Do you want anything from the shop? And I gave him everything I'd earned that day to get another bucket and sponge. But the next day we washed 4 cars, and then within 4 weeks I had 4 friends washing like up to 4 cars a day, and I wasn't doing any of the washing anymore. So like I didn't have the black.
And your mates are fine with that?
They were all right because they were getting paid. This is.
And you're getting a percentage?
I was getting the percentage.
So early entrepreneur.
Yeah, right. And it was the first instance where I thought, I'm still going to get what I want, but I don't have to do the things that I don't like. All I'm doing is knocking on the doors and collecting the money and doing the sales and booking them in.
Which is the part you were good at, and your mates may not have been able to do that.
Exactly that. And I didn't really like washing the cars. So I delegated the part that I wasn't inspired to do, did the things that I was inspired to do, still got the bike, got less money, but it was postponing some of that freedom in the short term to get what I wanted in the long term. And it was a real eye-opener. I thought, this must be why people moan about money. They just can't use it the right way. Because if you use it like this, it's amazing. You still get what you want and do more things you enjoy. And you enjoyed the actual process of having that little business? I loved it. I remember conversations that I would have with people about oh, we've got a squeegee. We squeegee the things off. Other people don't do that. I was really trying to have a competitive
become an expert on squeegees. It's amazing where business can take you.
But I don't know where that came from. And the only thing I can put it down to is that lack of security, like that void that drove me into, because I am a bit of a people pleaser. So whatever I do in business, I want people to like me and have a good experience. That's a deep thing within me.
And so your car washing experience taught you that you like dealing with people. You probably knew that, but it taught you like dealing with people, and it taught you about business. Did you use that Delegation to leverage into other businesses later on?
Yeah. It was like, I remember standing on the balcony of one of the flats thinking, I was looking at the guys washing the cars, and I thought, this is something, and I took that into work life. It was always prioritize delegation, figure out what you're good at and what you enjoy doing. And I used to build these matrices, I like doing this and I'm good at that and I like doing this, and all the other things I would try and replace as quickly as possible, starting with the lowest cost replacement first. So, admin, get someone in, £10 an hour, do the bookkeeping, £10 an hour, get someone to do that. And then I would just work up the expense list until everything was delegated. Then all the profit that came in would then just be paying me to do stuff that didn't feel like work.
So that early freedom.
Yeah, exactly. It's much easier to optimize your job and your business for freedom than it is to get financial freedom. And I think a lot of people neglect that. They're like, I've got to struggle here to get financial freedom, when in actual fact they can optimize their business just by delegating uninspiring stuff, and they will feel free.
I do have, had companies where it's difficult to get the manager to scale, and sometimes I'm more like the coach than the player.
Yeah.
So I have to we need to, you need to make a number 2, like get a manager. You need to have someone who can replace your job. I mean, obviously I want that anyway in case the person leaves, but I also want that so that person's time can be freed up to, sometimes the CEO is the best salesperson.
Yeah.
Oddly enough, and he doesn't want to be stuck deciding what freaking printer to buy. He wants to be out talking to customers.
I would never be a CEO.
Or she.
She. I would never be a managing director or a CEO. That's just not my role. I want to go out and be creative and do all the things that a CEO would probably hate or slap you for. But it's interesting because you went from that angle to then really heavily focusing on how to maximize opportunity in business and how to boost returns on investment and things like that. And your focus would be delegating and make sure you're delegating, make sure you're getting the most out of your team. So that says it all, really.
Yeah, it's a bit like in some ways going from trading financial markets to businesses was a bit like chess. Everything, the information's there.
Yeah.
So if I was to buy the euro because I think interest rates are going to go up, and they don't go up. I know I'm wrong. So often in business, it's more like backgammon. They roll the dice. Like that business failed. True. I still don't know why. Or that one succeeded. Yeah. Why did we get that order? I don't know why. Like it's very hard sometimes. Or or why did they give us a break or not give us a break? Or why did that person join or that person leave? There's so many things which are hard to know. So sometimes I feel with business, you're trying to grab this piece of jelly. You can't really understand it. Whereas in finance, you kind of there's a whole list of things, and they're known. They're known unknowns. Whereas in business, you get all these unknowns all the time.
Absolutely. With trading, it's just patterns that have the data's there historically that you can take advantage of as long as you're strategic and consistent in your approach. But with business, you kind of have to have a bit of an X factor. There's fundamentals, of course, of doubling down and bootstrapping and scaling and delegation and great marketing, great product, most importantly. But there is such a higher failure rate in business, and I think it's because of I don't know. It could be big. It could be many things.
Well, I think most businesses fail.
It's money.
Most startups, most startups fail because they run out of money. I mean, I know it sounds simple, but it's the timing of when they run out of money. It's so frustrating. Most businesses fail because they run out of money before they've tested the idea.
Yeah.
And that's the frustrating part, because you have an idea. I've got a new type of umbrella. Yeah. I'm going to sell it. And we've got money to do it, and then they spend the money before they find out if there's real demand for that new umbrella. Yeah. And I've done it. I've seen it done with companies I'm involved in. It's very easy to do. Spend all the money, because it's hard to get value for money sometimes, but you spend all the money before you know, and you end up failing before you know if there's demand for that product. And it's like watching a movie and you don't get to see the ending. It can be frustrating because people don't want to put any more money in it or any more time into something.
Yeah.
And I've seen that way more than you might expect.
What makes a good opportunity for you then? Because you've invested in 100 startups plus. What makes it? What do you look for?
Unfortunately, like being a chess player and from the markets and things, I'm always trying to spot patterns. It just seems like a series of one-offs every time. So as I said, it's more like backgammon than chess. But I tend to, when I go into business, I tend to back a person.
Yeah.
And I find most ideas are valid. And you don't really know until you test them. So it's, I know we're talking about getting market data before you launch your business, but a lot of things you don't know. Say with software companies, you don't know around the world if someone's building this app right now, and if Microsoft are about to release it. So sometimes you can't do that. So I find often you're releasing something into a void. So. And I treat most, if a doctor comes to me and they've got a reasonable idea in medicine or something, I think the idea is valid, and then it's just trying to test that. So I try to test the idea as cheaply as possible. Yeah. So if he or she's got a new type of stethoscope, which we want to test, we want to market, then I just try to, this is our budget, and we're going to find out as quickly as possible. We're not trying to make a profit or even necessarily any sales. Yeah. We just want to know, the first thing is whether that stethoscope's got demand. Right. And a lot of that is about the person. So for me, most of the time I'm backing the player.
And is the player because of experience, or they're just a disciplined person, or they've got work ethic? Or?
I've done all sorts. I mean, sometimes it's risk takers, sometimes it's conservative people, young and old. As long as I think they know what they're talking about, and I don't mind. And sometimes when getting to know if someone knows what they're talking about is when they say, "I don't know."
Yeah.
Often the people who don't know say, "I know," and the people who do know say, I don't know. Yeah. And it's a sign of confidence, and it's a sign of, it's a sign of being genuine.
Yeah, exactly.
So if someone is a know-it-all, or they always knew this, and I've invested in businesses, and they go, I knew that wasn't going to happen. I knew that. And I'm like, we didn't.
This is going to be the best thing since Uber. This is good. They all love that one.
And I love the ability to simplify. If I'm talking to someone, like a scientist, I've spun out companies out of universities. If I'm talking to a professor of chemistry, and I don't know much about chemistry, who can simplify, I think that's a clarity which I think is very useful, and I think those people make good managers, or because they can take other people with them. Where if they're talking like some language you don't understand, then I don't think they can get other people to follow with them.
For sure.
in general.
Yeah.
What about yourself? What idea would you back? Who would you back, or what idea would you back?
Yeah, pretty similar. Anyone who's got a proof of demand, that's really it for me. I've invested in a few startups. One of the things that I like to invest in, like you say, is like my risk in their reputation. So the reputation risk, like Daniel Priestley, for instance. If he comes to me and says I'm starting a new software business, I'm all right giving him some money because he's got a big reputation to upstand and
experience maybe
experience, but he doesn't want to let people down. He's a good guy. He's got a good reputation, and there's a reputation risk that I think you can factor into your portfolio play. But then, just demand is the main thing. If there's a demand for something, it's just a numbers game. How much money you put into ads after that point.
You mentioned you were away with Richard Branson and other entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
Did you learn anything from that surprised you, or hear anything that surprised you?
I learned how people neglect their health. There was a lot of eye-opening realizations of the importance of vitality and health, and Richard led the way with that. He was cycling up a flipping mountain. And the other thing was a lot of people don't know when enough is enough. So it's like you can have all the money, but still, it's not quite what you thought if you don't know where you're going in the first place. So
not so much business lessons, but a real
confirmations in what I already sort of believed, but it was like affirmed by some of the people on that trip.
Yeah, I know some people who are very wealthy and still obsessed with making more money, and yet their health is not great.
No.
I'm like, like maybe you should worry about that.
I know.
Particularly as you're getting older. Like maybe, I know some billionaires are trying to live forever, but I'm just talking about should I make it to 75?
Well, yeah. I was in Dubai in 23, and I was on I know some guy over there who's got a yacht, and we was on this yacht, and there was quite a few very, very affluent people there, and they were all talking about, I want to get to 50 million next, and you're like, well, why 50 million? That's a round number, And he's like, it's just the next number, And I said, well, to get to 50 million, what have you got? It's probably take me 4 years. I have to really knuckle down and say, okay, so it's a lot of sacrifice in 4 years to get to. Anyway, it turns out after a few drinks I got out of him that he was just basically bitter about like an ex or an old work colleague or something, or an old boss or something. And he's really just driven by that. And you think you're going to put in all that sacrifice to basically prove someone wrong or do that to someone who doesn't really care, and when you get there you won't really care because you're not doing it for you're a slave to their thoughts.
Well, you might end up competing with someone else then. You'll compete with the person who's got 60 million.
Exactly.
I don't know.
Exactly. And in the meantime, he's talking about how he's frustrated with his employees, his girlfriend's, leaving him, and I just thought, wow.
Well, a girlfriend leaving him doesn't, that's kind of a litmus test, or a little frog jumping out of the water or something. It might tell you. I mean, I've got, without knowing the details. If your personal life starts to fall apart, it's not a good sign either. Is it?
Exactly.
Your health and your friends, your family.
Yeah. And why are you doing it? I think that's why are you doing it? And usually it goes back to the mental freedom where they're trying to please and appease someone else or prove someone else wrong. And I think that's internal slavery.
And what about ours? One of the things I enjoy about my life is that I have freedom, often have freedom to decide when I want to do something. So a lot of what I do is like with businesses is the gardening, you can leave the garden for a day. It's not going to, normally, but I do have to, you do have to be involved in it. So I like that freedom of when my goal is, I like the freedom of when I can work when I like quite often. But my goal is to work half the time.
Yeah.
Which is, I'm 65, so I'm allowed to do that. So my goal is to work half the time and have the other half the time to sort of, but, not working at all or having. I think I read a very good book called Happiness by Design, which was written by a professor of psychology, I think it was. Anyway, it's a fantastic book, and he talks about. I simplified it down as I would, into purpose and pleasure. And if you have too much purpose, you're a workaholic. If you have too much pleasure, you're a hedonist, and neither is happy. And you need to follow. You need to have a good balance of purpose and pleasure. And so all the time I'm trying to get the right mix of my two Ps.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I think I'm the same. I'm always up to something, but I love having the calendar that's flexible that I can just choose to come and do a podcast or, do something that's fun.
So what are you up to now, Jason?
Now I'm actually focused on YouTube. We're doing a lot of, my son is my editor, my chief editor, and me and him, it's more of a growth development for him as well. So we get to work together every day. I'm teaching him business. I'm teaching him, some work ethic and some, but standards, of quality, serving people well, not half-assing anything. And I'm really enjoying that process. Teaching him some, psychology around business, and he's just a phenomenal technical editor. Like, he's doing really great developing in that, and we're just having fun building this channel, reaching more people. I'm writing another book, so I'm actually writing a trading textbook, funnily enough. Right. And yeah, that's it. What's
your YouTube channel called?
Jason Greystone.
Right.
Very, very.
And
original.
It's about
over 500,000. We're looking to get to 1 million by the end of the year.
Wow! And what's the main subject?
Freedom, everything around money, mindset, money, investing, trading, business, income, everything. But it's all, the reason I started the YouTube channel was for a transparent and realistic approach to the world of finance. It was, when I started it was just so much snake oil and false truths around everything to do with money. So the reason Dan wrote about me in his book, Oversubscribed, is a section on me called It's Okay to be Contrarian, because basically I just started telling everyone the opposite of what everyone else was saying. But as a result of that, I've had a really rewarding, loyal fan base, and it's been amazing. But I just thought I'm sharing this information with a view to not make money from it. I don't need to make money from it, so why not just share the truth of what's worked for me? And in doing that, we've had a phenomenal, it's been incredible to see change people's lives and help people. It's been amazing.
So it sort of started out as a hobby, and then became pretty serious.
Yeah, but unlike you, I was in investing and trading, but I was an electrical engineer, so I used to write software and stuff, and I'd never spoke to a camera in my life. And the first day that I put one of these softbox lights in my face and a camera, it took me 4 hours to record a 4-minute video. I was sweating profusely.
And that was what you're doing your own edits.
Yeah. I was doing everything.
When I was first went on TV, even on my first one on Dragon's Den, I was so nervous, and so nervous I could barely speak, and I had the other dragons ready to jump on any mistake I made, or you can imagine, right? And that was that would be edited, but still I was so nervous. But now I actually love live TV, which is it is a skill you can learn.
It is. You just keep doing it, and you just you get used to it. I've done a TED talk now, which I never thought I'd do, and it's been crazy. But I look at the first attempts at it, and I think, I don't know how I managed to get through that, but just keep trying it.
Well, I remember talking to someone about their public speaking skills, and she told me, she was a serious public speaker, and she gave me some great tips. But one of them was, like she'd done like 500 or something. She did like 5 a week or so. Anyway, she'd done 500 talks, and she said the first 50 were terrible. Right. But so it is a skill. Yeah. It is a skill.
You just get a bit better every time.
And when I was because I was in the care system, when I was till I was about 10 or 11, I didn't really speak. So, right. So I kind of I like doing it because it kind of forces me. I'm used to it now, but it kind of forced me to do something which was not something came easy to me as a kid. Yeah. So it was a good skill, good activity to learn.
Did you do things that forced you against what you was comfortable with?
Yeah, well, I remember deciding, because I'm a bit of a maths, that how my brain worked, I suppose. When I was about 13, 14, I realised that personality was actually important. I didn't have one. This is my, and I remember because I was trying to think about and so I decided, what does it take to have a personality? And because I didn't really have parents, so I'd look at people who I thought had personality, and I wrote down 5 things that they did.
Really?
And I decided I had to do those, and they were all 5 things that I hated. You had to look people in the eye, which I hated. I didn't really talk, right? I could talk, but you had to look people in the eye. I had to make jokes. I had to ask some questions about themselves. I had to stand up straighter. I just remember a whole list of I think it was 5 things, but particularly look in the eye, tell jokes, listen very carefully what they say, ask questions about them. I thought it's not actually that hard to be interesting because you don't need to be, you just need to listen to other people.
Yeah, right.
So I remember going through it like scientifically and then forcing myself to do that. Otherwise, I was not going to get anywhere.
Wow. Yeah, I used to just like opt in to do like the violin in front of everyone in the assembly hall and all that, and I don't know why I used to do that because it was petrifying, but something in me would just make me do things that I really felt uncomfortable doing.
Yeah, well, sometimes you can feel uncomfortable, in a public situation, and it's not bad. If I do public speaking, like I like to have the butterflies.
Yeah.
If I haven't got the butterflies, it means I don't care enough, or I'm too sleepy, or I'm too,
right.
I don't want to be so nervous I can't talk, but I want to have butterflies. I want to have adrenaline. I want enough to get the
For sure. Yeah.
Well, Jason, it's amazing how quickly, we've talked about freedom and happiness and delegation, and, there's been a lot to talk about. It's been really interesting and it's been very refreshing. Thank you very much for the chat.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you.